Quarantine Subterfuge. How to Travel in Lockdown by Brandon Aragon, March 30th, 2020. Movement is the universal language of personal freedom. Louis Chevrolet. In this article, I'll show you how to move during quarantine, avoid and deceive authorities with forged quarantine documents. Before I get to the good parts, we must first deal with useful idiots who will call the extortionists on you for not obeying quarantine. Believe it or not, this has become more common than you might think. The title of the Gazette article I found on my friend's Facebook says, "Callers flood dispatch lines to report those not following stay-at-home order." The advent of coronavirus has led to the realization of the fact that many places in the world are dealing with massive police states, especially the US. So, dealing with potential Soviet-style neighbors will be key. Always try to make it look like your home. If you live in a house and have a garage, try to make it a habit to park in it so your neighbors will always assume your car might be in it. Leave lights or TVs on if they're in view of certain windows. Leave your home through back entrances and take roads that have less eyes. More importantly, build good rapport with your neighbors. They'll be less likely to call you out to authorities if you're in their good graces. Offer them any surplus supplies you may have, or offer them a drink or some cannabis if you suspect they partake. Substances like these actually go a long way to making friends. This will give you a great opportunity to feel them out. People love to talk while on these substances, and let them. The more information you find out, the better your chances will be, not only during quarantine, but in the near future with the ever-looming dollar collapse. This could give you an idea of what they may or may not do in certain situations, as well as what they believe in terms of the quarantine or politically in general. Your first few hangout sessions, most politics talk should be avoided, except current events like quarantine and how they're holding up. You want them to know you're there for goodwill. This will be the best moment to tell them that you're an essential worker, even if you aren't. Make sure you have some kind of data that'll back that up, because they'll ask. If they do see you leave, they won't report you. If talking about politics, make sure you're agreeable in cases that align with what they're talking about while not compromising your own beliefs. For example, if talking to more liberal-minded people, I would agree that we need to legalize drugs and that immigrants help economically. With conservatives, I would agree that we need less taxes and more guns. Make sure you've had multiple hangout and drink sessions before you spring the taxation is theft conversation, if at all. Make sure care is implemented in every situation. You can always make new acquaintances, but new neighbors are harder to come by unless they move. Traveling can be very tricky, as many states have full quarantine lockdowns and Florida just set up checkpoints. In a New York Post article, Rhode Island set up checkpoints to detain out-of-staters, mainly New Yorkers who could face 90 days in jail, a $500 fine, or both. Many states have harsh consequences and fines for disobeying, with $1,000 fines and 6 months in jail or both, like Texas's Williamson County noted in this article here. Other states, all travel has been restricted unless you're getting groceries, going to a hospital, or are an essential worker. With government incrementalism, I suspect checkpoints are on the way in those states and many others as well. It is important to avoid paying these fines so we do not lose precious resources and enrich the state. If stopped and you're near a grocer, tell them that you're going to pick up groceries at that location. If it's not near your home or the address on your ID, you could have issues explaining it. If you go to the grocery store, make sure you save the receipt in case you have to drive through a checkpoint or you're stopped. Those should be good for at least a couple hours. If they do look at the time, say that you went back because you thought you left a bag you paid for at the store. Forging essential worker documents are very easy. Make sure that the document you provide has at least the word essential on it. I recommend essential and critical infrastructure worker. To verify if the document you want to forge falls under this category, check CISA's guidance on Essential and Critical Infrastructure Workforce PFD here. You'll want these documents to say that your company follows all federal health and social distancing guidelines. Forged documents that grovel to the federal agencies and show respect to, quote, authority will not only make you look more official, but will let you pass by with greater ease. This picture is a real essential and critical worker document. Don't ask me how I obtained it. It's best to forge a natural gas manufacturing company essential worker document form or something similar. Only use the document as a last resort. Make sure that the company you forge has assets and locations in the area you intend to travel through or to. This way you can travel anytime you need to. The authorities are less likely to scrutinize you if you explain that you're being called out due to a potential gas leak. You don't want to alarm them too much, so saying that there could be a potential leak would be better in most situations, but would emphasize that you still have important things that you have to get to. Many of these notes say that if whom it may concern wants to verify such documents, that you've been instructed to notify your supervisor for verification. This is something that you want to make sure you have planned ahead of time. The supervisor, aka scripted friend, must be aware that you may call them. It's also better if they're international or have an international number. These are harder to verify and the friend will have no ramifications for covering you. If asked why your supervisor has an international number, you can just say they got stuck working abroad due to the quarantine. This is a good reason for you to go with a global company as well. Trying to travel across multiple states will be very complicated, especially through states with complete quarantine lockdown, so try to avoid these. Also, it may vary from county to county as well, so do as much research and planning ahead of time as you can manage. If you must travel through lockdown states without a state license plates, you'll surely get pulled over eventually. Make sure you have a really good excuse at that point. You were stuck here during the start of the quarantine lockdown, etc. Be careful. The state is doing everything in their power to restrict our rights to travel freely under the guise of keeping us safe from a deadly virus. Everything in this article could surely change as local, state, and federal governments implement more tyranny across the country. Even in times of mandated self-isolation, we can find ways around to still have some ability to travel. Sometimes it's easier to get around the system than to blatantly fight it. We are more useful free than incarcerated, and as lockdowns become more strict, it's important to find ways to appear to be following the rules while actually doing what you want or need to do. May you have luck where you don't ever need to show documents at all, but hopefully you've learned enough in this post to be prepared should you be stopped while traveling during quarantine. End article.